Welcome. We're honored to have Dr. Arnie Gotfryd to share with us many years of research and experience working with children and helping them overcome difficulties and challenges that they may have. It's quite new in the secular world, the concept of neuroplasticity, which means that the brain is not necessarily set in one way from birth and unchangeable. Rather, plasticity from the term of plastic is that the brain can, with the right exercises, can change and strengthen and create new pathways. And there's a lot of research that was done in the past, I'll give it a years maybe later, I think about 100 years or so, of working with the brain and creating change and improvement. It's been known before that already in Chassidus. There's a famous concept brought in Chassidus, before x-rays were even invented, I believe, but the term used in Chassidus is that we could see bebuchish, we could see with our eyes, and the Rebbeim obviously have x-ray vision without the machines of x-rays, that we could see in the brain the creases that are caused in the brain due to a lot of effort, yigiyah. So the Rebbeim saw this way before, that the brain, with the right exercises, you can see a physical change in the brain. And that Nakuda is what came out later with in the general knowledge of the world by professors and researchers, and a lot of techniques and exercises have been developed. We've been in touch with Dr. Gotfryd the past couple of years, and he shared with us some of the activities that he's been using. We've done things over here for the past 15, 20 years based on the same concept of neuroplasticity, and we've seen tremendous changes in students, whether it's students that had limitations of not being able to tell time on an analog clock because of their spatial function that was not working properly, or reading. There's like over 21, and maybe the list is greater than now, over 21 cognitive functions that the brain has, that different people have limitations, that specific area of the brain is not working properly, and we're not stuck. We're not stuck. There's a lot that can be done. So without any more delay, I'm going to introduce Dr. Gotfryd, who I forgot it.
An accidental expert in applied neuroplasticity. Okay. Hi. Welcome. Thank you very much, Rabbi Levi Plotkin. I have to say that in all the years I've been talking to educators, to principals, to teachers, as far as it goes with principals of schools, very, very rare to find somebody who really has a developmental approach, and you really do. It's really been gratified about the back and forth. I know you're a tinkerer, you open your pocketbook and you buy stuff and you try it and you see how you could fit it in. I wish you continue tremendous success. You should be a good example for your peers and have an amplified voice among them, as everybody realizes that the numbers are exploding of kids that can't function or learn or self-regulate for whatever reason, whether it's ADHD or autism or something else. So my journey starts here when my son Shmuley, center bottom, was unable to really thrive in a classroom or in all kinds of other situations as well. And I had to look for things. And eventually I got into this field because of him. Janet actually will understand my journey because she's another accidental expert in applied neuroplasticity, as it so happens, because of her, in her case, autistic son, who's now 55. But, so we connected over that, and I told her about this talk, and she decided, yeah, she got a free night before she flies back to Mexico. So I want to extend my gratitude. My son Shmuel is now Al B'Shalom. He passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. But he's the reason that I do what I do, and I started doing what I did for other people, because a candle for one is a candle for 100. So I wanted to pivot and do my full-time efforts in this area to help the children who don't thrive in school and other environments to be able to thrive. Because tinkering around, I found stuff. I also want to thank my wife, Leah Hannah, on the You're Right. So she's the only one in this picture who hasn't changed in the last 20-something years since that picture was made. As you can see, I'm all salt and no pepper. But yes, we're now empty nesters, and that's how life rolls. And of course, I have to give thanks to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because without his blessing, I simply wouldn't have had the guts to mortgage the house, buy technology, hire teachers, give it away in schools for 40 kids for 3 months in order to launch the whole idea of does this work or does this not work, and then turn it into a business. So yeah, the Rebbe's Bruch was instrumental as well. So yeah, it starts with a personal story, and I think everybody here has a personal story, and I think that whereas some of us are accidental experts in applied neuroplasticity, those of you that have children that have these struggles can be an intentional expert in applied neuroplasticity, because you're going to learn some principles that you can apply yourself and see, God willing, results, as 90% of the people who do stuff will see. So you might know a kid that kind of looks like this a lot of the time in school, kind of tuned out, kind of not very happy. Maybe he's more like the ADD anxiety type of kid. There are so many different ways to be tuned out of a classroom. Or you might know a kid that kind of looks like a kid in a red shirt, and when it's circle time or story time or anything else, this is what he's going to do. And of course, we all would rather have the kid in the red shirt than a whole bunch of kids in the green shirt, because they're lively and they're enthusiastic and they're engaged in everything. But in a classroom, it just doesn't work, and they wind up bumping into all the rules of school life, and they can't adapt, no matter how hard they try. Some kids do, some kids don't. It's like they are driven to distraction, and they have to do stuff like that. And then this kid is not really so unfocused or so hyper-energetic and hyperkinetic. He's just a kid that, as one dyslexic a teenager told me, when I open a book, it's like watching ants crawling across a page. So imagine if that was your experience of looking at printed words. So he trained himself to look at the words as pictures and memorized each word, because he couldn't decode or make any phonetic sense out of anything. His brain wasn't made to break it down, build it back up, and then learn the general rules of how to read. So yeah, left to right, top to bottom. Anybody that's worked with dyslexics, even in the workplace, you learn to accommodate to the way they roll. Kid like that, we're the people of the book. You can't really relate to the book. You're at a bit of a disadvantage. I think we could all kind of agree. So these aren't the first kids to be in this problem. This lady's name is Jillian Lynn, right?
Gillian Lynn.
Jillian Lynn. Heard the name before? She was born in the 30s. When she was 7 years old, she went to a psychiatrist in London, England. Her mother brought her to the psychiatrist. She can't focus in class. She can't pay attention. She can't sit still. She's always up and moving around. It's disrupting the class. You better go see a doctor. A familiar story. It didn't start now. 100 years ago, it was the same story. The psychiatrist did an analysis in the office and then wanted to bring the mother into his inner office, leave the child in the waiting room, but since it was quite close, he left the radio on so that the child wouldn't hear all the details, annoying things that adults say about kids, which of course they remember forever, and that's how they get low self-esteem. So he wanted to protect this poor kid from the things that'll be said. Well, as they're walking into the room and they're looking back, they see this girl jump up and start twirling around and dancing around the room as the music is playing. And he stops and he thinks and he says, "Madam, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. That's really what she should be doing." And the story continues that she became the choreography director of the Royal Ballet, was responsible for productions like Cats and Phantom of the Opera, and I don't know what these things are, but it's a well-known story, and you know, we find some solace to know that there is room in the world for non-neurotypical people and room for them to excel if we can focus on their strengths and find ways for them to actualize them. So, you may have this superstar, maybe he's going to become a flying ace, who knows what's going to be. We look for our strengths in the kids that are in our embrace in life, whether as parents or as teachers, educators. But what is it? I mean, you know, we can't change the school system, we can't change the rules of how we live our lives. So if you can't focus, a lot of times you just can't make it and the world sort of leaves you behind. So then what do we do about that? What do we do for it has to do with how do we understand it. So that's what this is going to be about. Why some kids can't focus and what can we do about it. This is a mystery school bag that some of us see all too often. It may have one shoe in it. We don't know where the other shoe is. It may have sand there. It'll have lunch from last week, half-eaten sandwich, orange peels, but only candy wrappers, never candies come home. And every book that he doesn't need comes home with him, and every book that he does need does not come home with him. And you find the crumpled papers that have to be signed tomorrow, a week later, and why didn't you tell me, and back and forth, and there's no communication with the school. And the frustration goes on. We don't know where these school bags come from, but I think we got to get new school bags. Really, and that's where the problem starts now. And then the garments. The garment industry has to get attuned to the kids that just don't have a strong brain-body connection. Their motor plans are all out of whack. They never have put on an undershirt with the tag in the back. It's always got to be in the front. And that's even if the tag doesn't go, oh, you're killing me with this tag. If a lot of them have sensory avoidance and sensory seeking all wrapped in one, and you're wondering, why? Why? And then there's those funny clocks that sort of melt whenever it's morning and it's time to get into the car to go, or whatever the walking pool or the carpool is, or the bus. And there's no concept of time whatsoever, and the same thing at any other scheduled activity. Time is just a concept. 5 minutes, 5 hours, it means the same thing. Nothing. What is it with clocks these days? Do we have school bags and garments and clocks like this in our homes? Possibly we do. Possibly we eventually figure out that it's not really the objects in our life, it's the kid, and we're going to blame that kid. How many times have I told you? Okay, I don't want anybody to cry. This is I can do this really. You know, we've all sort of had our wick, you know, get shorter and shorter. The fuse gets shorter and shorter. We blow our stack every once in a while, maybe. And the kid is like, I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know. I just know that I'm wrong. And then we regret it later, but we still have to do something about it. So we go to the doctor and we tell him what's going on. And the doctor listens patiently for about 2.5 minutes and then says, why don't you try this? So the medication is the first line of medical defense in North America. Oddly enough, if you happen to be in France, they have the same percentage of children that are restless, impulsive, distractible, and disorganized, but they have 5% of the medication rate. So for every one child in France that's medicated, and it's not about poverty, there are 20 in the United States and Canada that are medicated. I wonder where the drugs are manufactured. But in any case, this is the first line of defense against the problem, and sometimes it works wonderfully. Sometimes children say, it's like putting on glasses. I can focus, things are working great. But then there are side effects and ineffects and other problems. So, but that's how it works. Medically speaking, in order to get that medication, sometimes you come up with a diagnosis. It could be ADHD, ADD, ASD, BP, DSPD, LD, OCD. Those are the only ones I can read in the bowl. If you dig a little deeper, you'll find GAD, and you'll find all kinds of other conditions that sound ominous and feel ominous when we're dealing with children that have these diagnoses. So I call it diagnostics, alphabet soup, because my Shmuley, of blessed memory, he was diagnosed, re-diagnosed, misdiagnosed, multiply diagnosed, medicated, unmedicated, remedicated, combined medicated, triple combined medicated, and then got rid of all those because they weren't working, and on it goes. Some of us have been down the road for a longer time, some for a shorter time. Some have mild problems and think they're tremendous, some have tremendous problems. But this is a common scenario. And he's trying to eat his alphabet soup with a fork, of course. If we're frustrated with the medical model of treating these types of learning problems, we're not the only one. This gentleman, Alan Francis, was the editor-in-chief of the DSM-4, the 4th edition of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders. They call it the Bible of Psychiatry. We're now under the DSM-5, but for almost a generation, he was, I guess, in a sense, the most powerful psychiatrist in the world. He was a gatekeeper. It is a disorder, it's not a disorder, what are its criteria, and so on. Had a whole army of people that were working under him. But when he saw where things are going, he eventually got the idea that we're medicalizing normal variations of life, and we're calling things medical diseases that are in fact not diseases at all, and saving normal, subtitle, an insider's revolt against out-of-control psychiatric diagnosis, the DSM-5, big pharma, and the medicalization of ordinary life. It sounds more like a rant than a subtitle, and it is. And why would a person like that do that? Well, one of the things, mourning of ALS is now a psychiatric disorder. If you stick to it too long, it's just not good. Or smoking, nicotine withdrawal is a psychiatric disorder. Skin picking is a psychiatric disorder. There's a treatment protocol for these things. They're separate, labeled silos of disorders, and he decided enough is enough. I think I understand the sentiment. So when we're weighing, what do? Do we go the standard medication route, or do we do something else like brain training, some kind of wellness intervention? And of course, you could take off the brain training and you could put on supplements, and you could put on microbiome, nutrients, and you could put on equine therapy, and you could put on all kinds of movement breaks, you put in anything you want. But as we weigh these wellness interventions, these brain supportive interventions versus a pill, we don't really know what to do. What is the brain training all about? Is it really a science? How does it actually work? And I'm going to give you a little bit of a context before I answer directly that question. Karen Pape, a Toronto lady, she's passed on now, but she was one of my mentors and one of the real pioneers of neuroplasticity. She specialized in children with cerebral palsy, and she started doing that over 50 years ago. And with brain imaging and the whole thing, and she had very innovative treatments, movement treatments, and she had and she was a public speaker as well. She had a phrase, pushy parents are successful parents. Pushy parents are successful parents. What she meant by that is that when you get the kid doing the drill over and over and over and over again, you're going to build neural pathways, and it becomes easier. Like the guy was on in downtown Manhattan. He says, "Which way how do I get to Carnegie Hall?" What the guy answered? Practice, practice, practice. So this is the thing. she wrote this book, The Boy Who Could Run But Not Walk. Now, she uses an analogy for the learning process, the stepwise learning of an infant as they learn how, first of all, to crawl, and then they'll be doing that for a while, and then they're going to pull themselves up against the furniture, and then they'll plop down again and stand up and fall down, stand up and fall down, against furniture, not against furniture, up, down, hundreds of times, until they're wobbling but standing, and all of a sudden they've learned how to stand. And then start cruising, but cruise and fall, and cruise and fall, and cruise and fall, and cruise and fall, until, after hundreds of times of trying that, all of a sudden they're cruising. And then they're walking and falling, and walking and falling, and walking and falling. So we don't grow incrementally or in a smooth curve. You know, our functions don't increase like that. They increase stepwise. And what's happening is we're creating grooves. We're creating grooves. Neuroplasticity works like this, that nerves that wire together, because a certain motor plan takes certain electrical signals in the brain. So the wires that connect your brain to your muscles fire in a certain sequence for a certain movement. And if it does it again and again, and in a certain sequence, then there you go, you get a new developmental step. Spoiler alert, some kids develop those sequences, those routines, much more slowly, or much more slowly. And that's a key of the cerebellum, that it's a sensory integration function of mediating, one of the areas that are key in mediating the brain-body connection and making routine things like reading to the end of the line and then going to the next line instead of skipping or repeating a line, or walking without, like what one of my parents said, he can walk through a doorway and bump into both doorposts. That's just the way he is. So, yes. So this is the science of neuroplasticity, as we spoke about it. Brain can change, exercises that affect the mind. One of the foremost proponents of neuroplasticity, his best-selling book came out 2007, I think it was. So what is that, 17 years ago? Norman Deutsch, a professor in Toronto, New York, Columbia, and University of Toronto, neuropsychiatrist. Fantastic book, The Brain That Changes Itself. We talk about pushy parents or successful parents. Let's talk about pushy kids being successful kids. Norman Deutsch has a story in his book, a story about Paul and Edward Bachirita, the sons of Pedro. Pedro was a prof at City University of New York. Anybody know this story? He was a professor at the City University of New York, and he got a massive stroke, which debilitated him. He couldn't walk, talk, eat, handle the routines of daily life at all without constant help. They had physiotherapists work with him and work with him. He plateaued. He was not able to do anything. They said, there's nothing more we can do. Both kids, one of which was a neuroscientist, the other one was a doctor, they said, we're going to be able to do something with Dad. And they got to work. They got him crawling. First thing, they got him crawling against the wall. First, they got him hands and knees, leaning against the wall, because he'd fall over. And they'd give him a push, and they would move this arm and this leg, and then that arm and that leg, and this arm and this leg, and that arm and that leg, back and forth hundreds of times, until he could crawl against the wall. Until he could crawl unsupported. Until he could stand. Until he could walk. Until he got back to being a prof at the City University of New York and mountain climbing. Well, he continued, he got back his functions because the brain will find a way. After he died, the elderly father passed away. Now the son, Paul Bachirita himself was a brilliant neuroscientist, but he's also passed on. But once that that Pedro passed away, the son got his brain and kept it. He was keeping it for life, because the massive damage that was done in the brainstem and different other areas of the brain that control motor movements were never healed. That damage is there forever. A scar is a scar, but the brain figures out a way to work around it. So the connection would grow around these things. So that was a real testimony to neuroplasticity. It's one of the chapters filled with heroes of this field. And I want to give you a 2-minute lesson in this. So you're going to learn some neuroscience now. But the good news is it's only going to take 2 minutes.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of the brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
So I'm sure with this crowd, there are many thoughts about the Chassidus that you've learned, the Torah that you learned, that absolutely supports this. It sounds like the lessons that we study in life, but this is the way we're built. This is the way every human being is built. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So this was Paul Bach-Irita. He was the expert that first developed sensory substitution, where you'd be able to, blind people would be able to see things by he had a camera that was connected to sensors that would display the vision, but on your skin, like on your tongue or on your back. And when you would turn the camera, turn your head, there was a camera on the head with like film and sort of kind of thing, and you turn, so you would be able to get a visual representation, but your visual cortex would light up, but the stimulation would not come through the eyes. It would come through the skin on your tongue or on your back. He understood this neuroplasticity idea and developed this technology. Interestingly enough, there are, I think, 22 times that the Rebbe brings down the verse, V'ro kol basar yachdav ki pi Hashem diber. 20 out of 22 of those times, he talks about the skin itself will see. Not that the eyes of flesh will see, but flesh will perceive and see. So I guess we're getting a taste, this is one of the things that we're getting a taste of Mashiach, as we're trying to heal ourselves and our families from various problems. There is one other video that I wanted to show you. And this is the last one. It is a little bit longer, 4 minutes, but it's very instructive because it'll show some of it'll show a lot of the activities that I do when we do this therapy in Canada. But it will also show Joseph's story, and I have permission from his parents and him, he's now an adult. He's no longer 9, he's 20, and I'll tell you where he's at today. So let's just, here we go.
Children with learning disabilities such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are often treated with medication. But now in the Canadian city of Toronto, parents are learning about a non-pharmaceutical approach that is effective and also fun for the kids.
For children whose brains are suffering because of ADHD or some other learning disability, Maxi Mind is offering the use of technologies to help children focus both in and out of the classroom.
By combining exercise, music, and even technology used by astronauts, the courses are helping children with what they call brain training exercises or neuron education. Maxi Mind's educational directors said their therapies are geared towards stimulating the brain's growth and development. It all helps improve a children's focus, mood, learning skills, and behavior.
We do it without having to get them through boring academic exercises, something. We unlock their inner genius, you could say, so that their innate abilities can shine in school or home or social circumstances.
An average session at Maxi Mind looks like just fun and games. One of the biggest draw for kids is getting to play with video games in class. It's not just your average video game, however. It's actually NASA-developed technology that is used to train astronauts not to lose concentration during missions. There are no keyboards or controllers involved. Instead, kids use their brain to control and play the game.
What it does is it senses the brain waves, it detects when a child or an adult is out of mental focus, and if that's the case, when the games fail. So the kids get educational objectives achieved while in a state of mental focus. So it's generalizable and transferable to the classroom. Many games are just games. But these games train the focusing skills and the processing skills that a child needs every day.
Other methods they use include having children listen to engineered music delivered through bone conduction headphones, or having them balance on a board while hitting a tennis ball. All of these activities are aimed at helping children develop their focus, mood, and behavior. Ora Stebbins' 3 children have all gone through these brain training courses. Her 2 daughters suffer from attention deficit disorder, while her son has ADHD. Stebbin, like many parents, didn't want to use medication to help her kids.
I don't like the fact that it doesn't really heal the child. It does suppress symptoms. It'll suppress sometimes symptoms for a certain amount of time, and then a lot of times those symptoms get worse after a certain amount of time. And that's why parents have to up dosages and so on and so forth. There's also the side effects.
Her oldest daughter, Shia, was the first to try this method 2 years ago.
A lot of frustration all around in school, zoning out in class sort of thing. So as soon as she wasn't grasping the concept the teacher was teaching, it was just, kind of going from there. Home, a lot of stress, especially when it came to anything around learning and homework. It was just such a struggle. Yeah, huge.
After going through the course, both Shia and her mother noticed the changes.
Right after I started Maxi Mind, I started realizing that I was concentrating and I found class more interesting because I was sitting in class and actually listening to the teacher.
Stebbins said the most drastic change she saw was in her 9-year-old son, Yosef, who had the most severe symptoms of her children. After just 8 of his 40 sessions, she noticed a change in his behavior beyond the classroom.
He's displaying with a lot more concern for people's feelings, a lot more compassion. He's a compassionate child by nature, but I believe that it's coming out much more. It's way more enhanced. And I see it every day, all the time. So I'm really happy right now.
But it's not just Stebbins kids. According to Maxi Mind, about 95% of their clients improve in focusing, comprehension, reading, writing, and managing their feelings and relationships.
So that was a video that I wanted to show you, and I want to tell you a little bit about Joseph, or Yosef Yitzchak. He's now 20. He was in and out of 8 schools by the time he was 9.
Wow.
He was diagnosed with ADHD, autism, and oppositional defiance disorder. Mom was terrified to take him to the store for fear of what he would do to random strangers in order to get a reaction, nothing more. Completely innocent behavior, but no restrictions on what he would do in order to try to get a reaction, because he needed the reaction to calm down to calm down his brain in order to process. He went to one of those schools, was a special needs school in Toronto, an excellent special needs school, the number one in the Jewish community, and possibly number one in Toronto, I don't know. And the other one was run by the city, and it was for behavioral kids. He got kicked out of a school for behavioral kids at 9. So, what to do? He did one course, went back to the Eitz Chaim, the school, one of the preferred schools in the Jewish community, so he could go back and learn. He was deemed not only unsocializable, but unschoolable, because he was illiterate in both languages, Hebrew and English. And he had a beautiful bar mitzvah. His speech was wonderful. His Devar Torah was great. He could learn, Hebrew and English, and somebody would come over and he would hold a place in the Chumash, and then he would talk to the kid, and then smile and kibitz a little bit, go right back to learning. I watched this happen. He didn't look like the same kid. He went to high school, supported. You could tell that there's something up with him, not your classic kid, but he right now is a digital marketing guru. And if I was hiring right now, I'd snap him up in a second, because if I had his business acumen, I wouldn't be just getting by. I would probably be very well to do now, because he's just brilliant. A lot of these kids are truly brilliant on their own channels. Sure.
Was he actually autistic?
Pardon me?
Did the diagnosis change?
It did, the diagnoses come and go. I've had kids that were not diagnosable after they were done. It's not every kid is like that, but we do get this. Okay, so let me come back to where we are. So let me do the story of how I got to this therapy, and I think I can do it in 1 minute. You saw the family, you know about the kid, couldn't thrive, homeschool, sensory, everything was not going right, friends. I didn't know what to do, everything failed me. The tutoring, the psychologist, the social worker, the swimming lessons, play dates, you name it, tutors. So I started looking at, I went to grade 25, what can I do? It was all science. It wasn't my fault, I never went to yeshiva. I thrown under the bus of life. I got a very secular education. I started looking for things that would work, that were developed, that were scientifically developed, medically endorsed, something that I could teach to a kid and he would enjoy enough to do that could make a difference. And I found a whole bunch of stuff that was very helpful, also a whole bunch of stuff that was not at all helpful, but I became quite obsessive about trying everything that could possibly work, and hit and miss, but there were a lot of hits. The local school principal, Baruch Zaltzman, Cheder Chabad in Toronto, used to be the principal here at Holy Torah before he came to Toronto. He said, "Do you still have that stuff that you used for Shmuley? We've got this kid, maybe you could work with him. We got that kid, maybe you could work with him." So it became like a bit of a hobby, trying to get other kids. And then I started getting adults and stroke recovery and senior with depression and cognitive decline, and just a bunch of kids with behavioral or learning or focusing, or everybody's improving. So at that point, that's when at the beginning of the talk, when less people were here, we decided to pivot, and my wife agreed with the plan, and the Rebbe gave a bracha, and Cheder Chabad is one of the places where I did a pilot program. We had 20 kids there, pre and post measures of academic and psychoeducational measures and behavioral measures from teachers and from parents, and the results were glorious, and they're on our website, and you can take a look. Today, last year there were 25 coaches. Now there are 30 in Southern Ontario where I live, and one in Florida, and over 2,000 children have been through the program. And that's really the story, and it took 3 minutes, not one. I apologize. So, how does that help us? What can we do? Like, Maxi Mind isn't in New York. I can't sell services here. I'm not set up for it. So, why am I even talking to you? I just wanted you to know that there are things that I got, things that I haven't gotten, things that I've learned, and things you can do at home that don't break the bank. Just consider me a resource. If you want to reach out to me if you have a problem with a particular kid, you can WhatsApp me and maybe we'll have a conversation and I'll see what we can do. But everybody will walk out with a document and some suggestion of tools to get that are very inexpensive, that could be fun to do with your kid, that could make a difference. I did not know why such a wide range of disorders were treatable with basically a standardized program of movement, music, and technology. Of course, that had to be adapted to the child's level of functioning, and you keep making it more and more challenging so the kids enter and exit at different places on this highway. But why was it working? Until I read this particular report of a study, and I'm reading the study itself. New brain imaging data points to better treatments for autism and ADHD. Here's what they did. Okay, hopefully your eyes won't gloss over. I'm going to talk science, but at minimum of gobbledygook. They took kids that were autistic, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and neurotypical. And they took brain scans. They looked at their behaviors, their diagnosis, and their white matter connectivity profile. Their neural networks. Everybody's heard the term neural networks. It's a buzzword. It's the information superhighways in the brain that connect the regions. And lo and behold, they found something fascinating. The weak link in the chain is diagnosis. The behaviors were highly correlated with the connectivity profiles, but were less correlated with the specific diagnosis. You might have a kid with the same behaviors. This one's diagnosed like this, and this one was diagnosed like that. But what was constant was, the more you saw these deficits, the more you saw weaknesses in white matter connectivity. Dr. Plotkin was talking about different areas of the brain where different cognitive processes happen. If those areas cannot connect to other areas, they're not going to get the support they need. For example, I need to see the letter. I have to know what the letter sounds like. The sound of the letter is one place. The visual of the letter, I have to know how the letters put together. I have to be able to do a visual process, and I have to store the meanings are stored somewhere else. So I have to call all this data. So I need a good filing system. If I've got a disorganized brain, connectivity does not support the organization, then I'm going to be at a loss whenever I try to read. But if I'm, the corpus callosum and the other places, the prefrontal cortex, and everything is connected with white matter is high speed, high signal, low noise, boosted at nodes. Like it's really cool stuff that the body does this, and that's what happens. That little video about neural networks showed it. So suddenly the light went on and I understood. Because the conclusion of the study was, if connectivity networks are the problem, then networks will be the solution. If you can boost white matter connectivity, you should be able to treat all these conditions. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, now I understand why it works. I don't think any of these geniuses who developed these things over the course of a century had any clue, because we didn't have the fMRI studies in order to be able to analyze what's really going on. And now they're starting to see, evidence for it. So this is an enhanced picture of the brain, a slice through a brain. And here is a picture of the different regions. We were talking about the different regions of the brain, and they need to be connected with one another in order to things work. But how can we at home, how can we build those connections? What can we do? So in order to answer that question, I'm going to answer a question with a question. I'm Jewish, this is what we do. We answer questions with questions. Imagine you're being invited now to think, I can give my child one gift. The gift has a label, one word. What would be the gift that you would give your child in order, this particular child that you're thinking of now, what would you want to give that child for life? I'll help you, let's call it a skill. What skill would you want to give that child? Pardon?
I said, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
Empathy.
Empathy. Beautiful.
Perseverance.
Perseverance.
Resilience.
Huh?
Resilience.
Resilience.
Confidence.
Confidence.
Connection.
Connection.
Life
Reading.
skills.
Huh?
Reading.
Reading. The ability to read. Very
Ability to learn
diverse.
other skills.
Pardon me?
Ability to learn other skills.
The ability to learn how to learn. To learn other skills. Fantastic. We didn't have to scratch deep in the surface. I don't know what I would do, but I know what I believe as of today. I believe that the best thing to give a child is a sense of balance. Balance in any area of life, but balance emotionally, resilience. We talked about resilience. In schools, they talk a lot about zones of regulation. If you're a teacher, you may have heard about it, you may have been trained on it. Blue, sad, sick, tired, moving slowly. Red zone, mad, angry, terrified, yelling, hitting, elated, out of control, manic, whatever. And then green zone is when you're calm and alert. And then most kids are just basically silly a lot of the time. They're frustrated or worried or silly or wiggly or something, some loss of control. The goal as a teacher is to get them alert and engageable in whatever is going on. Now, it is natural for us to go through all our different colors of our existence, right? We don't, I've met kids that are in the green zone all the time. They're like scary, right? It's like, that's good. There's nothing really wrong. It's just really, really rare. It's like that quote-unquote ideal kid. But really, balance is getting out of balance and coming back into balance. And that allows you to connect with people, and that allows you to process language, and allows you to be uncomfortable in order to get comfortable again. Your resilience factor is also a sense of balance. The Rambam talks about balance, Maimonides, Moses Maimonides. He published a magnum opus in 1177. We're still studying it today. And he has a couple of chapters on personality development. He says the best thing for a person to do is to get a sense of balance. Too stingy, that's bad. Too generous, you'll have no resources for yourself. There has to be a balance. You're always giggling and laughing all the time, hilarity. It's like when you get it serious. If you're morose, that's no good. Try to find a balance point. So life pushes us off balance. We always need to get back to balance. An interesting thing is that the physical sense of balance and achieving a sense of balance is very much connected to our ability to read and our ability to mature, our ability to process in different ways. And when I said I'd give my kid a sense of balance, I literally would stimulate their vestibular sense while giving them coordination exercises as a way to build them up in order to be able to, and there's a million ways of doing it. Today I'm going to be suggesting one. Get yourself 1 or 2 balance boards. The top one is a little easier. It's on rockers. So it's only got 1 degree of freedom, so just left, right, tippy. And the other one is balancing like on a circular, a small circular, semicircular platform. So it's going to tip in all degrees. There's a way of cushioning it, like you could literally put it on a cushion or hold a blanket under it or a thick towel, and then it's easy to stand on. Or you could put a chair beside it, hold on to a chair, maybe 2 chairs in between doorposts if the kid is sometimes you need to literally sit on it or kneel on it because they get completely out of whack. And then other kids can dance on it right away, so you don't know who you're dealing with. So, but while they're balancing, you get a couple of bean bags, and you toss it back and forth, and there's certain exercises that are recommended, and there's a document that you're going to walk out with tonight. My contention is that anybody who does this with their kid of concern, 15 minutes, 4 times a week, 12 weeks, will see noticeable, sustained improvements that when you stop, there'll be a new level. And if you don't, I will reimburse you for what you spend on your exercise tools. You just show me what you buy, you show me proof of purchase, but I'm going to cap it at $50 because you can get all this stuff for $50. You get 2 balance boards, these 2 balance boards, and some bean bags for $50. I think 3.5 by 5.5 inch, those bean bags that are that size, like the smaller ones, they're good for a little kid, and they're good also for an older kid. So, see, bean bags are better than balls. Balls go all over the house, and you have to go chasing them all the time. Bean bags, they're a little easier to grasp. The document breaks it down. How do you teach a kid these things? And how do you teach yourself? How do you prepare yourself to be your child's coach? Parents are not predisposed to be able to coach your own children. Maybe you've got a teenage child that can work with this child. Maybe you've got a neighbor, an aunt, or a cousin, or you know, somebody that you could bring in, or something like that, because you know that it's just going to become another one of those flashpoints. Or you've got a zillion kids, 10 yearbook, and you have many more, and there's no time. 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week. You want me to find an hour a week? Are you nuts? An hour a week for one child? No. We do them by bundles. So, but that's my guarantee. Now, why would this work? Is because there's a theory of learning here. They call it the pyramid of learning. If you get out of this pyramid, I guess that's the Exodus from Egypt. But at the base of this pyramid, tactile sense, balance sense, proprioception, deep tissues, joints, the things that the occupational therapist is dealing with to help a kid get on the map, a brain-body thing, that's where it starts. And then your other senses, then you get your sensory motor development, your position in space, and your motor planning, and your body awareness, left and right, and front and back. Go tell a child, no, the other left hand, palm up, palm down. It's like, I don't know, palm, where's my palm? Which way's up? I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're saying. You need to show them very often. But once you get these coordination activities going, then what you're going to get is daily life activities, behavior, academic learning, socializing, communication. It gets an upgrade. Because it's built on these more primordial skills, more primal, more basic brain-body connection skills. When we work with the body, we're actually getting at the brain, and we're building those connections, and then skills emerge. You literally don't have, how many times do I have to tell you? Well, it doesn't really work to tell me repeatedly because I cannot store and retrieve the information. Do me something. Sorry. But then it's like, oh, yeah, I remember when that happened, oh, I can do that. It's a skill that emerges. So that's how that works. Or as Dr. Ron Minson, who developed one of the technologies that we use, the engineered listening, integrated listening system we use with our clients, he says you can't grow a flower by pulling on the top. So we have to build it up from the bottom. Now, there are other things that we need to do. We got to work with ourselves. The kid messes up yet again, breaks something. What do we do? Like, am I going to blow my stack? Am I going to accept the kid for what the kid did? I can reject the behavior, but I have to start by accepting the kid. We all know that this is where it has to start. And we all know that this is really a big challenge. But they really need this. These kids here know, like I did a survey of parents. The average parent of I'll just call them a special kid, believe that that kid is hearing no more than 10 times as much as another kid hears it. Most parents rate it more than 20 times. So, I don't know, the jury's still out, depends on the family, but how do you feel after hearing a lot of that? You say, oh yeah, it's not going to work anyway, why should I try? So we, as parents, we have to process things. We need support, maybe from a spouse, it may be from someone else that's going through the similar things as I'm going through. But if I can't interact with my child in a supportive way, when they need me to, if I can't be strategic, if I'm always getting triggered by they did it again, then I need to deal with myself first before I can raise that child to the next level. Otherwise, the child is stuck because I'm stuck. So nobody wants to be stuck, so we have to take care of ourselves. Sometimes it just might be as simple as getting me time and self-care for a mother. That could be the solution so that you come back at the game refreshed and self-valued, so that you can transmit a sense of self-value because you've got it as well. There's different tricks of the trade. And I'm sorry I'm speaking primarily to the mothers in the room, but it applies equally to some fathers. Now, I'm going to show you some new math, one equation. I already taught you some science. It worked pretty well. Nobody fell asleep. A equals E minus R. This is the most important math equation you could possibly learn. A is anger, E is expectation, R is reality. The level to which I am frustrated, angry, blow my stack, depends on the difference between what I expected to happen and what actually happened. So, let's take a look. Am I in control of the external reality? No, not really. Reality happens to me. What am I in control of? Well, my anger is a function of my expectation and reality, so anger is an outcome. What's my input? I can manage my expectations. I want this child to function at this level. Do I expect that child to function at that level today? If I do, then there's the problem. And here's why I can't emotionally correct him or her, because I'm emotionally invested in my expectations. So I'll give you a simple example. I lend somebody $10, they say they're going to pay me back tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, they pay me back. Now, if I expected $10 and I got $10, my anger is 0. 10 minus 10 is 0. I have 0 anger. I expected 10, I got 10. If I expected 10 and I got 0, so 10 minus 0 is 10, I've got a $10 anger. He didn't pay me back. And another day went by and he still didn't pay me back. Now imagine that my expectation was 0. If he doesn't pay me back, I don't care. I wasn't expecting to get it back anyway. I was hoping that he'd get it back. Do I know if it's going to come back or not? I don't know what the future holds for me. And if I get the $10 back tomorrow, 0 minus 10, I've got a negative 10 anger. I'm totally thrilled with something that's completely natural. We got to be thrilled with things that they do that are completely natural in our expectation. Because they're going to notice what they get a reaction from. So negative attention is better than no attention. So the kid that is good is the one look, I taught in the classroom many years. I know full well you ignore the kids that are good and you pay attention to the kids that are making trouble. That's the way it works unless you happen to be a really good teacher. Okay, so that's another thing. So we talked about a couple of things for parents. Here's another thing for parents. I'm suggesting that you get new glasses. What does that actually mean? Look, accentuate the positive. Nobody has to tell you this. You could write a book on it. If you defocus failure, oh, that must have been rough. You know, if you can master that somehow, and you can go, wow, you did it, and describe what it is that you're pleased about, you're going to be a dopamine delivery system for your child and going to reinforce these positives. Now, that's always true. But if you're working in neuroplasticity, this is actually a very, very special role. Because if your child has, let's say, a little boy way of doing things, and now he has a big boy way of doing things, as part of his repertoire, he randomly did it once. If it's not noticed or commented or praised or whatever, I'm not advocating for rewarded, let's call it, the reward chemistry has to be activated, but really your smile and your engagement is really generally more than enough, but it's enough. So it may not come up again for a while, but if it is commented in a positive way, then I want to chase that good feeling. It happens neurologically. It's like, oh, I got a smile. I got a thank you. I got, amazing, let's go to the park. I got, which flavor ice cream do you want? I'm just really happy that you were able to do X. Don't call it a reward, just call it a celebration. And these things work. So, changing your glasses. Another thing is a gratitude journal. A gratitude journal. This is good. When you comment these things, also note them to self. Note to self. But the kids love to hear how you read to them from your recollections of the good things they did. These kids, now they'll never believe you say, oh, you're so smart or you're so good. They'll never believe you. But if you say you set the table, well, they may push back very hard because they've already got the negative scripts going on in the brain. So they don't want to hear this positive talk because they know they're going to disappoint later. So if I can keep your expectations low, I won't disappoint you, and then I won't be hurt when you're disappointed. So I don't want to make you happy by my behavior because I know it's going to fail in the long run anyway. So you say, you set the table, thank you. The kid will go, yeah, but I didn't put out the glasses. But you put out the forks and the knives and the plates and the napkins. So, yeah, okay, here, you want to bring out a glass? I'm happy to bring out. You did it, thank you. Don't worry about what they say about it. Because you've made that deposit. And they got that message, and they got that feeling, and they'll store it, and it'll come back later. That's the reinforcement. When you're doing those exercises, you're going to be creating pathways. When you create the pathways, you're going to be getting some new behaviors that are emerging, God willing. When you get those, be ready for how you're going to respond when you see it, and that'll be a very, very good tool. It's like you're building the highway, but with these behavioral tweaks, your own behavioral tweaks, it's like putting up the guardrails on the highway. All right, a couple of years ago, Yud Aleph Nissen, I did a giveaway of support for 120 parents of kids, and put an article up, and that was my Yud Aleph Nissen gift to the Rebbe. And then we got great results. The reason this is not bragging, I am an arrogant egotist, that is true, but the reason I'm mentioning this is the results from the mothers and grandmothers and fathers that engaged in this little booklet that you're going to get on the way out, bought some tools, engaged, asked their questions, shared in a little brain booster group, what their experiences were, It was very, very encouraging, and they got some really, really good results with a lot of kids. Of course, many couldn't organize their lifestyle in order to get that done. No harm, no foul. I would have believed that 90% wouldn't be able to pull it off, but 10% would. But I was pleased. It was much higher than 10% that were able to pull it off. So I'm basically giving that offer to you today. Not only you should buy stuff, use the document, and try to get some change, but share with me, and I'll be your cheerleader as you help your kid thrive. I can't promise a whole lot of time. Time is my limited resource, but I can let you know that within a few days of WhatsApp will be responded to. That's just the way I generally roll. So that's that. I will, just do remember to get your documents on the way out. I think they're on the back table over here. The Maxi Mind Learning Basic Sensory Integration Exercise Kit for home use, a guide for parents. And I think we should take a few questions if there are any.
What age is this geared towards?
Our youngest, you could, depends on how, you need to adapt things. You will adapt things. But you can do this with a 3-year-old.
Up to.
Up to, as I told you, my oldest client was 83. So, I had a YouTube star, I had an elite athlete, I had a business guy. He went from a millionaire to a billionaire. He said, "You're going to be my brain trainer for life. I want you to close your company. I have an office right there. I know what you're doing with kids. You're going to help me. I'm a lost case. I'm ADHD. I've got 200 people that report to me, and it's a family business. I'm not holding up my end in operations. Every meeting, I have no idea. I see a stack of documents. My brain starts to fry." I said, "Do 40 sessions. We'll see what happens." We did 40 sessions. And he was happy with the results. And I'm the master of the meeting, and I can read for 5 hours. Why would I not be happy? So that's about age.
Why bright kids can learn?
Why
bright kids can learn?
They get bored. And boredom is a skill.
No, there's a book. Why bright kids can't learn.
Oh, the book. I don't know. I never saw it.
Okay. So,
you like it?
No, I'm just wondering if it's the same concept that what they teach in that book.
There's probably a big overlap. I don't know.
Also, like vision therapy.
Vision therapy, there's different types of vision therapy, but you will be doing vision therapy when you do these exercises, because that beanbag is going to be tossing a beanbag in an arc like this, tossing it back that way, and it's going to be going back and forth, and you'll be throwing this way, crossing the midline. You'll be doing some stuff that will be a vision therapy that, if you did this exercise set, you do them like I just said to do them, very often in 20 minutes, you can see a change in visual acuity on an eye chart, reading and writing speed and quality, 80% of kids. It'll be gone by the next day. But you do 1 minute reading and writing test, I did this, and
Wait, can you tell us more about that?
vision therapy is good, but this is also there's a visual integration coordination element to this with the balance and coordination. Yeah, anybody? Yes.
Can you implement some of these things?
Can you implement some of these things in teaching? I think that we should make a little group, the 3 of us here, the principal, you and me, and we'll talk about it, we'll brainstorm it, because absolutely, there are, the person who developed the exercise, these particular exercises, Frank Belgao, he's passed on now. He went from school board to school board through the southern states and then up the west coast, and he actually launched, somebody mentioned Neuralink. Who mentioned Neuralink? No, Neuralink.
Yeah.
Popular in the Jewish community.
Yeah.
So he's one of the 2 companies that stole Frank Belgao's ideas and did a half-baked job of imitating them and faked their own data, but realized it was a great business model in providing sensory integration exercise for mental performance of children. turned their stuff into great business. Belgal never turned it into a good business at all. He was just out there, you know, trying to save the world and help people. But Neuralinks is based on that Belgal principle. He worked with school boards. He raised IQ levels of whole cohorts of children in elementary school. He had a whole way of adapting it. Unfortunately, his protocols for schools don't exist today. We can't really see exactly what it was that he did with the schools, but exactly the same type of stuff that you see there. He has 160 exercises that all of my coaches have to learn in order to do with kids. I've given you about 20 of them in this booklet. So, yeah, there's stuff that you can do. There's stuff you can do in a classroom.
Spacewalk.
Show me. Spacewalk. Show me. No? How does it go? Do you want to describe it? How does spacewalk work?
Explain.
It's in the booklet, but it's in Belgal's booklet. In his booklet, but I don't know. I didn't learn it. It's not one of the things I do with my kids, with my coaches. So, okay, ask Robert Plotkin later about spacewalk, or you'll ask me later, and I'll look it up and I'll let you know. Yes.
I'm just wondering about like swimming and versus this, or what's the difference?
Hang on just a second here. These questions are good. I think what I would like to do is give people that want to leave a chance to leave, and those that want to stay will continue the conversation. So, thank you very much. I'm going to turn off the recorder here.